that Mike D'Antoni has now, not just Harden, but Paul.
Defense by Utah. Chris puts out.
Saw that comment by AD. He said, let's get physical.
That's what he should be striving for.
Chris Paul, his eyes wide open. Go burn!
4%, and he's done 44% for the last 2 years.
Chris Paul with the...
Paul shoots over his buddy with 6 on the 24.
Shoot a jump shot here.
And the favors 10 on the clock. The sidestep three. First, second foul on Patrick McCaw, second-year player of UNLV.
At the switch. It'll be Chris Paul.
Now Rudy jumps out on Paul. He'll fire up a corner three.
That helps at the free throw line as well. Chris Paul has to...
Mike has played 9 minutes tonight. Chris Paul putting on a show.
It's Paul weaving through traffic. And he's in
for the high draft choice. Shot clock down to 4 seconds now, down to 3.
Rookie out of Louisville. Answer from...
Blazers lead it by 10. Paul driven
for the Clippers last year. He's the best value contract in the
point lead for the Houston Rockets just underway. Chris Paul snakes around that Capella screen and took
Gerald Green, who was signed a couple of days ago, who has been terrific. They get the rookie in the air.
And you're talking about the win streak. They went from
4 of 7 shooting, has 11. Crossing over Paul, surveys and fades. 6:33, then you're much better off. Long range, Chris.
Victory of having such an incredible season like the Rockets have had.
Yeah. 6'5", PJ Tucker.
Chris Paul, there's a little threes here in Game 5, shooting close to 40%.
Paul, but can play all positions.
The other people so that they can run hard.
Chris has to figure out what to do with it. He'll put up and
take a basketball, put it right by Capella's head to get the proper shooting stroke as
28, 9 games below 500, but Rudy Gobert got healthy and they
always dangerous. He got the switch he wanted. Jokic doesn't get out.
PJ did a conversation, very animated, going the other way. Now Ingles is watching Chris Paul.
Again. Sit him left.
Chris Paul three.
And put Capella on a poster. How one is that?
Rockets too many opportunities at the basket on the offensive end.
Paul with the NBA All-Star. The screen, the three.
Down to 4. On a dribble drive on Gobert. Stop and pop. It's up. Beat the clock.
Late in his career. And that's a lot of, his handicap kind of hurt him. He's
going towards the middle of the floor.
Paul gives it up, gets it back from Nene.
Has a foul to give. Jerebko trying to defend Paul.
Point line. Paul working inside. Here's Paul on a fadeaway.
Working on Nance. Can't seem to get by him. 3 seconds down to 2 as Chris puts it up.
Here's Paul.
Clock at 5. Here's Paul.
as well as PJ Tucker.
Whoa, there's a couple of steps there. There's Paul. Counter! Now you add a future Hall of Famer to the mix. Looking in danger on Zubac.
Are you kidding me?
And the three won't go, but the offensive rebound and Paul triple.
New viewers.
Well, you know, you could have two different names.
Sure.
There's Paul coming at Hassan. Shoots it over.
Capella comes up top. Screen Green. Paul fire.
Paul, who is not, as of right now, scheduled to participate.
Remember, one of the strengths of the second unit, obviously, is their defense. They got to dig
In that clock, Chris Paul puts it up with 6 seconds.
Paul moved to the 9th place all-time in assists.
Paul, hand in his face.
Not give a foul. Chris Paul with a jumper!
Houston getting any shot they want, either at the basket or at the three-point line.
And 13 on the shot clock. Chris Paul takes on Gobert, goes with his left hand, step back jumper.
It's the legs.
Yep, you're only as good as your legs. Chris Paul's on the run. Looking for Brandon Wright to throw the lob. Instead, shoots.
He brought Chris Paul here in terms of him and Harden playing together.
Did you think it would go?
Ball check back into the game. As Mike D'Antoni didn't like the way that.
Been relying on that mid-range. Now he's got O'Neal. It's a three.
To go in the quarter, Chris Paul on favors. 3 to go. 3-ball cut.
First net turnover of the second half.
Chris alive now. He's got the big man on him. Steps back and fires.
Paul doing his ball.
Three-pointer.
Chris Paul got Orland on him, man.
Holiday to go for the steal. Step back three. Paul pulls it up on Young.
2 years. Always give you.
You see how Chris Paul turned and faced up? Yeah,
That was the shot. Paul to go. Came into the NBA and he's slow to develop.
Back in the corner. Kaminsky with the closeout. CP3
Again tonight, missing a second consecutive game with a left ankle sprain.
Except for Eric Gordon. Little medium right.
Didn't play a lot in the previous series versus Utah.
You want one of those jobs. Only about 150 change hands.
It's O'Neal, shot clock at 2. Paul, the dance, fires, go!
Paul going to work on Bender, and there's the pull-up.
in first quarter points. It's been a part of their success as Paul tries another.
Butler trying to poke it away. Paul, that one. Chris Paul, he starts weak.
For the game.
The question is, who's going to come along for the ride with him in the fourth quarter?
3, Paul.
Capella, one extra pass. Chris Paul again in the.
Well, they can score quickly. You know that. They can put up big numbers.
The big lead. And Paul with Gobert on him. A quick shot.
Paul. A lot of dribbling here by Paul. Goes to the fade.
Plays. This is a team that is 40-6.
Now you see what Turtle did.
He is 7 and a chance to reestablish that or exceed it.
Chris, third quarter for the Warriors. Good job by Bell on Paul.
And Paul will try to maneuver around it. He got the screen. He keeps the.
Chris Paul just backs Jalen Jones right out almost to the baseline and then puts up the.
Paul hesitates on a 3, something Mike D'Antoni says he can't do.
As well as Kevin Durant. 10 on the shot clock, each one more. Chris Paul feeling.
Chris Paul going to work.
Right offensively. It's Paul, and Mitchell is there, and a shot by
On him down low, but he's got the lane open. Now they switch back as
So that's the other
With
night.
Houston at home.
Paul. Jang is defending.
Chip leveled yet. Chris Paul open 3. Got it! Point lead against the Rockets is really much less than that. On a switch played by Towns. Paul shoots over.
ISO now. Ball. Fade. Crossover. Fade away jumper.
Once. I'm kind of scared to wear it.
Chris Paul over Jokic.
In progress and hope. Paul.
Good job by Luke Baumute, tipping it over to Chris. Chris is open. Boy,
Chris Paul, a little stutter dribble. Off balance one.
same matchup a moment ago. Yeah. Seconds, down to 3, down to 2. Chris Paul deep with a throw.
Not sure that's a fair fight.
Defender, though.
Chris Paul, fall away.
Ball against Bam.
Keep shot. Hand of Capella. It'll be Chris Paul's mid-range.
Tucker in the game. Tarek Black has just come in, sets a screen over Pachulia. The shot by Paul.
And now James Harden out for at least 2 weeks with a hamstring injury.
Pelicans. Chris Paul with.
But in this, it just seems like right now Harden is going to.
No doubt. Chris Paul gets inside, finds his rhythm to Ariza. Into the corner for another long 3. Got his own rebound.
Now you got a rebound.
And Chris Paul.
Clippers on a 10-0 run. Paul will dance and fight.
Rockets up by 2. Chris Paul now.
TJ McCollum, guys have made a shot here in the second half.
So what's the counter here? How come Phoenix hasn't countered to that yet? Has
Seized the game.
They're steal number 6, Zuby.
It's amazing. Isn't that 6?
Why not?
Why not?
Got 6 seconds. Down to 5. Down to 4. Down to 3. It's Chris Paul's turn. Puts it up.
Paul and Mitchell. That's what an offense is based on. So he would watch. I don't think there was video.
Chris Paul.
Here in the second quarter.
And the Rockets have brought inbound again. Paul for 3.
Clock. Paul has to force one. And scores! A deep 3-pointer.
Instead, they get Chris Paul. And his step back.
Like you said, you always want to torch your old team.
Oh, yeah, he had 22. There's Paul putting the move on Looney.
With the offensive rebound to Paul. Got a mismatch against Pau Gasol. Stairs.
Doesn't take to the rim. And gives it off to Paul before the shot clock.
Paul. Steps back, falling away.
Paul fading away over
Tonight.
They're a plus 22 with him in the game tonight.
Paul above 42. He's right now just under 42% here in 2018. Paul again.
To game 4.
We will be up there on Monday, and Paul will put this over. Rubio, who is so much a part of the regular season, 48-win regular year. Here comes Paul. He is on. Shot clock to 5. Here's Paul rubbing off Looney. And
Beat Philly in London. Paul again.
Bench, he's standing up, coach. Right now.
Right in front of the bench. Paul.
Just committed their 3rd team foul. Here's Paul. A line. Chris Paul with an okey-doke.
it's on this team, especially with their depth.
And especially at the defensive end.
Paul, 3.
Paul turns on the Jets. Goes baseline.
Line and backs out. Got another switch. Shoots a 3. Got it.
Measry defending Paul. 2 to shoot. Paul for 3 over Measry. It's gone.
I really like the angles that he set screens at. That's the thing that he does so beautifully.
Years as well from that center spot.
Free throw line jumper.
Worried about with Gordon on the floor.
Oh, the pullback by Paul, yes!
And stared at Wes Johnson, guys.
These days we hug afterwards. You tweeted.
Pitch out, Chris Paul.
Yeah, pick up the slack. Yeah, that's what you got to do as a team.
Chris Paul. About the defense being on a string.
You're better off jamming them and forcing them to put the ball on the floor. Chris Paul.
Lennox got him on the switch. 3-pointer for Chris.
We'll see who Houston will be targeting.
Paul's had a great month offensively, averaging 23 points per game in January.
Not far off. Chris Paul raises up.
Future Hall of Fame point guard. How much better is their defense?
Having trouble getting a good shot. Down to 2 seconds. Down to 1. Chris Paul.
Rockets. Randall with Chris Paul trying to maneuver around him. Going to shoot a 3.
He's 21 years of age. I don't want him looking over his shoulder. I'm going to be on his case, but he's got the job.
Gives it up. Paul banging with Curry to the fade.
Looking at him warily. Paul will just fire the triple.
Chris got the switch he wanted. Puts up a 3.
What Billy Donovan decides to do, Corey Brewer becomes the guy that goes.
And he was 3 of 5 from downtown in that first meeting. At 13.
Shot clock to 3. Paul with the run.
Yeah, you got insurance for the insurance.
Memories of 3 straight losses at home. Here's Paul coming the other way. He's so good at handling that ball.